Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by just thanking Ryan for preaching and teaching in my absence. It's good to be back with you. And this morning, this Sunday morning, we're going to start a new series that I'm entitling The Path Forward. As you know, we have reached a 30-year milestone here as a church. And one of the things that I'm hearing a lot is we can't wait until everything returns to normal. And while I get what everyone is saying, it may be a mistake for us to think that we have succeeded if we return to the way things were and fail to learn the lessons that God is teaching us during this season. When I think of the early church, persecution hit the early church. They never went back to normal. The movement exploded in numerical and spiritual growth and in new ways as God had planned. And like the early church, I believe that God has a plan for us as well. The door to growth usually opens when life is hard. If you think about it, the times you have relied on God the most is during difficult times. I think a good way to look at these times is like this: I don't want to come out of this the same way that I came into it. So to shape our thoughts concerning the path forward, I want to take you to John chapter 14. John 14 begins the final or farewell discourse of Jesus. There are a few discourses recorded in Scripture, but this discourse is different in that it's only for the disciples. The scene is the upper room, and this is one of the longest and most personal discourses of Jesus. He's not talking to a big crowd, but only to his disciples. And what he's saying here are the things that I think we most need to hear. He's just finished washing the disciples' feet in chapter 13. Judas has left to betray him. He looks at the disciples, and these guys have left everything to follow him. And for the last, 3 years or so, they have followed him everywhere he has gone. But now he's going somewhere they cannot go. And so again, for context, we have to go back to chapter 13. And in verse 33, he says, "My children, I will be with you only a little longer." It's like a parent having a conversation with their children before going on a long trip. And they're anticipating their questions like, "Dad, can we go with you?" Again, they've left everything to follow him. But he says to them in chapter 3 and verse 33, "Where I am going, you cannot come." He's preparing them for what they need to be about while he's gone. Every parent does this. Before leaving on a trip, they'll say, "While I'm gone, here's some things that you need to do, and remember these things." No, you cannot go with me, Jesus says. But I want you to remember, a new command I give you: love one another. This is not a new suggestion or a new idea or a new recommendation. This is a new command. What's interesting as you read this is that it's not really new. Loving your neighbor is one of the greatest commands. But what makes it new is what follows in verse 34. He says, "A new command I give you: love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another." It's not the what that is new, it's the how. He's just finished washing their feet, and these words are falling on them against the backdrop of the most humble act of foot washing. He's stooping over. This is God here. God is stooping over to clean the grime between their toes. And so to love one another as I have loved you meant it's the kind of love that puts the needs of others before our own needs. It considers others better than yourselves. It doesn't insist on its own way. It's the kind of love that puts the good of a relationship over my own rights. He says in verse 35, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, "Hey, here are some fish stickers that you can paste everywhere on your vehicle, on your places of employment. This will be a sign that everyone will know by these symbols that you follow me." Doesn't hand out bracelets. And I'm wearing a couple this morning that say WWJD. And when people see these bracelets, they'll know you're my disciples. He doesn't say, "Through your biblical interpretations, they will know that you are my disciples." So let's argue and debate on all the unessential things until nobody can fellowship with anybody else. And there are dozens of denominations created. And through that, the world will know that you are my disciples. No. He didn't say it's through your moral superiority and righteous indignation they will know that you are my disciples. He doesn't say, I want you to work on your sigh of disgust. And when people talk about going to a party or when someone dresses immodestly in front of you, you use this sigh of disgust on them and act like you're better and more moral than them, and that will clue people in to the fact that you belong to me. He doesn't say they'll know you're my disciple by your political perspective, by the candidate you back and the vote that you cast. That will tell everyone that you are my disciple. He doesn't say by your posts and comments on social media, people will know that you belong to me. He doesn't say get on social media, make comments and be as disagreeable as you can, and the world will know that you are my disciple by how you criticize and complain. Like get on social media and talk about things you know little about with people that you have no idea who they are, and that's going to be the plan to win the world. If you kind of look at it today, you kind of get the idea that's the plan. But the conversation went differently. He said, they will know that you are Christians by your love. And if you do it the Jesus way, it will cause some of you to stretch a little bit and others of you to stretch a lot. We live in a world with a lot of tension, and everyone is hypersensitive and very defensive. But in the middle of this, we have an opportunity to stand out by the way that we love. The cancel culture, you've heard of this, that we live in, where people are publicly shamed for something done or said in the past, needs to be met with the cross culture. The cross culture cancels out shame and guilt with love and grace. The Jesus way, it requires foot washing and humility. Our governor has asked us to wear masks all through the month of July, and at the end of July, she extended the mask wearing through August. I don't know about you, but I sure wouldn't want to be the governor of any state these days. But she says to wear a mask. Who likes to do this? Does anyone like wearing a mask? And we can argue how much of a difference does the mask really make? And I've heard all the arguments, and I get it. But if you're looking for application for John 13 and 14, it's right in front of us every day. By wearing a mask, by simply wearing a mask, we're loving our neighbor. Jesus said, if someone asks you to carry their pack 1 mile, carry it 2. We're taught to submit to our governing authorities humbly and willingly, unless what they're asking us to do goes against the command of Jesus. This is really clear in Romans chapter 13. So Peter is listening to what Jesus is saying, and he has a question in verse 36. He says, Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus replied, where I'm going, you cannot follow, but you will follow later. And so here's the scene. They're in the upper room, and he's broke the news to his disciples that he'll be leaving, and he scans the room, and he looks into their faces, and he sees that they're confused. Their future looks different than what they'd hoped. The way forward for them is not what they expected. And so he sees the very scene that I see these days. He sees people who are troubled. And this is where the final discourse begins in John chapter 14. These are the final words to his faithful followers. And it's for all of us who feel overwhelmed and unsure of the future, for those of us who feel confused, disappointed, discouraged, and defeated. This is for all of you who are troubled. Would you have a seat in the upper room with Jesus? There are some things that he wants to say to you today. And he wants to show us the path forward. So John chapter 14, verse 1, the words of Jesus, do not let your hearts be troubled. Can you hear that personally this morning? These are the tender words of Jesus to you. When I hear a command like that, my reaction is, well, I want to have a heart at peace. But, here I am today, and I'm a preacher and I haven't been with my whole congregation for 6 months. Lord, my heart is troubled. And so he is telling me to remind yourself, hey, don't let your hearts be troubled. The command is easy to remember. You'll have a lot thrown at you this week. And when it comes, whisper to yourself the words of Jesus, do not let your heart be troubled. Okay, but how? Does it mean that you're going to change my circumstances and make everything better? Interestingly, for them, he doesn't make any guarantees in this life or promise them the road's going to be easier or better for them. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe, look at verse 1. You believe in God, believe also in me. The word believe there is also translated trust. The idea is putting your weight on something. Billy Graham was preaching, and he used this illustration here of a student pilot that was making her first solo flight across country when she became lost in a storm. Something had gone wrong with her instruments, and she reached for her radio and made contact with a local air traffic controller. She says, I don't know where I am. I need help. Please help me. The controller located her on his radar screen and began talking her down toward a nearby airport. She couldn't see a thing, but he could see her on his radar. He knew where she was. He knew which direction she was headed, where she needed to go, and the best way to get there. And so she trusted her life to a man she'd never met. And he got her out of the storm and safely to the ground. I know it is a preacher thing to say, put your trust in the Lord, but I'm saying it today with emphasis. Put your trust in the Lord. Most of us went into this season thinking, I can carry my own weight. I don't need anybody. And then the months roll on, and again, it's been 6 months. I find myself calling people just to hear their voices and talk about something we can laugh about. Some of us are putting our weight down on things that we've always done, money. Your income may be high and it gives you a certain security, but you'll come to a place where that'll not be enough. Some of you may put your weight down on your family. There'll always be disappointments, though, with family. You can put your weight down on scientific advancements, political answers. The list is endless of things that we can put our weight down. He will say later in the discourse, in this world you will have trouble. He begins with, don't let your hearts be troubled, but later he says, in this world you will have trouble. So, okay, how is this possible? He says, believe in me. I have overcome the world. And remember, he's talking to his disciples. They watched him with just a few words calm the sea. They were witnesses to the physical resurrection of Lazarus. He was raised from the dead. And so he says to them, hey, you know me. And so when I say the answer is to trust or believe in Jesus, I know it sounds like the preacher thing to say. But I really mean it. It's the answer. So my question to you is, do you believe what you believe? Most of us think we believe what we believe, but it's in seasons like this that you can discover where you're really putting your weight down on. And maybe one of your discoveries has been, I really believe in Jesus. You really don't know what you believe until those beliefs are tested. And maybe before COVID, you believed that you believe, but now you know you believe. Before, I believed my hope was in Jesus, but now I know. And so it's a good question. Do I believe what I say I believe? I can say that I believe eating healthy is really important, but if I just keep driving through those fast food restaurants we have here in Jasper, I have to ask myself, do I really believe that? It's called incongruent values, where what I say I believe and how I live, they don't match. And it creates stress in a person, raises their fear level. The American Heart Association says to relieve stress, examine your values and live by them. The more your actions reflect your beliefs, the better you will feel. If you believe in Jesus, then live it. Live like it's true. Do what he says. And when health concerns come your way, remind yourself, I believe in Jesus. When you look at this election and you think to yourself, there can be no good outcome, I believe in Jesus. My hope is not in government. When you feel financial vulnerability because of an unstable economy, remember, I believe in Jesus. You find your security in him and in only him. Do you really believe what you believe? I believe in the not too distant future, we're going to a place where there will be no pain and suffering and disappointment. I really believe that. I believe that God goes before us, and nothing, and I mean nothing, shocks God. Nothing catches our God off guard. In fact, everything is unfolding according to his plan. I believe his grace is sufficient. It's always enough. I believe His love can soften any heart. I believe our God can heal. I know there is trouble all around us, but we don't have to be troubled. There's a lot of uncertainty about us, but we are certain that He can be trusted. And so to wrap up, John chapter 14, we'll look at the next couple of verses. Again, this is Jesus' tender words to you as you set out to live this week for Him. Verse 2, my Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. He says there are two things you need to believe: who you know and where you will go. And that is the path. Know the path. You don't have to begin this week flying blindly, church. Don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Jesus says, believe also in me. Hope you have a great week. May God bless you.